I was once asked, how many religious leaders are there who are living with HIV? And my simple answer is, what percentage of the population is HIV positive? That percentage of religious leaders will be HIV positive.
Testing HIV positive is always going to affect people in different ways. For me, hearing that I was HIV positive was a very clear symbol, very clear message from the doctor: you are going to die.
Being HIV positive as a Christian, I think maybe it's a little bit better, I don't know. But being HIV positive as a born-again Christian is a double challenge, because born-agains, we are the ones who talk too much about issues of morality, issues of this and that, which at the end of the day, we end up not being able to even face the issue of, or the reality of HIV, which is now in the church as well.
I can remember so clearly sitting on the bed, being held by a nurse, watching the oxygen level in my blood drop, and I was losing consciousness. I prayed 5 arrow prayers, and I said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And then I was gone.
I tested HIV positive in the year 2000. And when I went to go and see the bishop at the time, Bishop Brian was very supportive of me, but he said to me, please, don't tell anyone else. At the time, it was such a disgrace. We claimed that AIDS was God's punishment for sin. The church preached it. Since then, we've repented of that message. Since then, we have said that we have grievously sinned against God by claiming this. For many people, there's a question that you ask, when did you become a Christian? That's not a question that I can easily answer. And the reason is because I can't remember a time that I wasn't. I felt God was calling me to the priesthood. And I went to go and speak to my parish priest, and I said to him, I think God is calling me to the priesthood. And his immediate response to me was, I've been waiting for you to come to me. To be a priest is the very core of my being.
At the moment we're here in Christchurch, and Christchurch was the first parish that I was appointed as a rector in. And I came here in 1998. This was a parish in which every aspect of the sacramental ministry was engaged in positively and beautifully.
When, as a priest, you stand at the altar and God uses you as the vessel for consecrating the bread and the wine, to hold these holy elements, it's very emotional. I can honestly not remember a marriage service that I've done that I haven't cried. Baptisms do the same to me. It's the holiness. It is that moment at which, in the special moments of people's lives, you bring God into it in a deep and significant manner that touches people's lives to the core. ignites new desire in their soul to deepen their relationship with God. I knew that I was gay by the time I was 12. I might have been younger, but definitely I knew I was gay by the time I was 12. I also knew, because of the close connection that we as a family had always had with the church, that that was totally against God's will. I was brought up knowing that. And so there was always a fight within me to try and overcome this natural part of me that the church couldn't cope with. I was down at St. Paul's Seminary in Grahamstown, and I was introduced to a young lady called Angie McIntosh, and she seemed a very affable and warm and devoted person. And so I proposed to Angie, and we got married. And it was a disaster, with its blessings. And David, our son, was born in the January of 1995. And I think right from the very beginning, David and I had an incredibly close bond. I didn't disclose to David that I was gay. I didn't need to, because Angie had left home with David when he was just over 2 years old, and Paul moved into the rectory and started living with me there.
Yeah, and after a year staying together, and the things started happening, and so we got involved then.
And although we hadn't started a relationship immediately, I don't think David can remember a time when Paul and I were not together.
Paul had developed a problem with his eyes early in the year 2000. He wasn't able to focus, so he was losing the ability to see. And so I said to Paul then, it's time for us to go and get tested together. He tested HIV positive first, and I said to the doctor, don't bother giving me an HIV test, just do the CD4 count. The irony, of course, is that the eye problem that he had nothing to do with HIV.
They both came to confide in me, and they did so, I think, because I'd made a public statement about the fact that I'm living with HIV in 1999. Luckily, by the time I heard that they had HIV, treatment was well available. But in the case of JP, a catastrophe intervened. He got a very, very rare syndrome called lactic acidosis. Very few people survive lactic acidosis, and JP ended up in hospital. We feared that he would die.
And that night, Dr. Gary saw my family and said to them, it doesn't look good.
I remember being in the waiting room of the ICU at the Kenridge Clinic and being told that he had a 50% chance of survival.
The next night, he said, it looks worse than the night before.
I went to visit him in hospital to comfort him, to assure him that he would reach the other side.
I had to sit there and look at the person that I love most, in his deathbed, and there was nothing I could do.
But by tweaking medicines, the specialist physician sat next to my bed and played with medication to try and get my kidneys to kickstart. And when he got my kidneys to kickstart, he knew I'll be okay. When I tested HIV positive, the one thing that I knew was that I had to be open about it. This wasn't something that I could live with in silence. I then told my bishop that I was HIV positive, and he asked me not to tell anybody else. The stigma was so heavy at the time. He was fearful that the congregation might reject me, and so I lived in silence.